here, so. Okay. Did you start it? Okay. Hey guys, so I'm Paige Apolito, and throughout my presentation, I'm going to be talking about the ongoing influence of American television from the 1950s and how the traditional gender roles were used at this time. And yeah, so I'm going to be going through my argument, my research, understanding my research, and then what my research means. So my argument is that the overall romanticization of the 1950s American television misrepresented women through the portrayal of the ideal woman after World War II, objectifying women on television, and then also just set expectations and pressures for women to obey, and its sexist influence of modern society. So now some context of my research is that before World War II, there was more traditional values of women staying at home and like the domestic sphere and being like caregivers and just really obeying orders and not really had a lot of decision making in families, and set this idea for the ideal woman, and then also a nuclear family of like the man taking care of the house and just really keeping things together. But then in World War II, all these men were set off to draft in the war, and this allowed women to work outside of the domestic sphere and go into industry and then work there. And a lot of this was encouraged through Rosie the Riveter as a speaker, saying that we can do it, saying that we as a society can contribute not just in the home but also in the industry and in the workforce. So now I'm going to make a connection from the stimulus of Johann Norberg from his article False Nostalgia, and this quote says, "When things change fast, we lose our sense of control. This is probably why a yearning for the past is especially likely when we experience rapid transitions like maturing into adulthood, aging into retirement, dislocating, migrating, or rapid technology advancement." And I feel like this has a very good representation of like the modern influence of like past ideas of like, oh, the good old days, and how we can really reflect from that, specifically in television, but this is often misrepresented through these televised shows and ignoring the truths of like the discrimination and of a lot of minorities, specifically in women, and just like the objectification and reinforcement of traditional roles set. So now we're understanding gender roles after World War II. So after World War II, a lot of these women were sent back to work in the home, and only like 30% of the women continued working, and that 70% still was likely working in the home of their family, and the women's sphere was like consisted around like fashion, gossip, and just like luxury, and just being like they didn't really have anything outside of that to do, or weren't expected to do anything outside, and a lot of this can be conveyed through television. And some television shows and a movie that I'd like to exemplify that really convey these themes are Fathers Knows Best, which is like the nuclear family, and showing how the father like really, as you see here, he's like smiling and really showing how he's kind of there to support and structure the house. But then in the Donna Reed show, it was a little bit different. There was still a lot of traditional roles of her, like being the cleaner of the house, like the cook and the wife, but she kind of had more of a say in like decision making, so it was a little bit different. And then we have I Love Lucy, which was also a television show, but it was really emphasizing on the patriarchal relationship of man and wife, as Ricky was really kind of like correcting his wife Lucy's like actions and outbursts of like wanting to work outside of the domestic sphere and more in showbiz. And then we have over here Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which is a movie with Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell. Marilyn Monroe's character Lorelai was seen to be like a dumb blonde and a gold digger, and then Jane Russell's character Dorothy was seen to be a smart brunette and who valued love. And this contrast between two characters really showed how at this time period, people really emphasized on like the value of women's appearance and their beauty being overlooked than their intelligence. So then now we can understand how this like echoes to today's society. Although over the past like about 8 decades, the women's job sphere has like really diversified. There's still like an emphasis on like the percentage of women in cosmetics, caretakers, healthcare, and less of an emphasis on women who are in law enforcement, politics, management, and business. So, yeah. And then now we can go through what does this mean. So this means for American society that these enforced traditional roles of 1950s television has been encouraged and relived through generations and generations of men and women, and kind of just reinforced and kind of creating a certain behavior expected from these women to be more passive, naive, and obedient. And then number 2, a more gender-based occupation, like more women are expected to be in healthcare and education, and less are projected to be like lawyers or in management. And then lastly, it's a continued discrimination and pressures and expectations were set for these young women to apply to because they are expected to act like the ideal women from the 1950s. Yeah.
Thank you, Paige. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. How did your research question evolve as you went through the process of your inquiry and then your research and coming to your conclusion?
So my research topic evolved by me really trying to like break down like the historical like relevance of like women in society and how we like have really been able to diversify ourselves and change through like social movements of like women's suffrage in like the 1920s, but also just like speaking up about our rights. And I feel like it evolved through a lot of like different things we learn in history classes. Like right now we're learning about like how women were sent back to the work sphere, and I feel like that really just influenced my overall like understanding and reflection of what we know.
And knowing what you know about the influence of media and the role of women and the expectations and social norms, what resonance do you see in your day-to-day life of the influence of this?
So I feel like, also in like personal experiences, I feel like people expect like women of my age to like know less, or they don't really expect people to be obviously correct, or they undermine them. Like a lot of my day-to-day classes, I feel like I say something and then like they're like, no, that's not right, it doesn't seem right. But then when often it seems to be the right answer, they're like, oh, I knew that, or they just kind of like brush off the reality that I was right and they were wrong.
Thank you very much. I didn't mean to ask you like a personal question, so thanks for rising to the occasion, because I was trying to.
But I feel like it's kind of general too.
But you handled that very, very well. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Oops.